Hello, and welcome to part 4 of the Second World War. Now we're going to talk about the road to war in Europe. Now, as I mentioned before, when Mussolini came to power, his objective was to turn the Mediterranean Sea back into one big Italian lake, right? It's not exactly where he's going to begin his road to conquest, though. The Italians already had Libya on the North African coast, right? They had obtained that from the now defunct Ottoman Empire, but they wanted to expand out. Now, Mussolini's actually going to begin, though, with Abyssinia. Abyssinia is, for those who don't know, is Ethiopia. There had been an attempt in 1896 by the Italians to invade Ethiopia from Italian Somaliland and Eritrea, which were also both Italian possessions in Africa, and it had been unsuccessful. Mussolini is going to convince the fascists in his party that they could very quickly take over Abyssinia and their emperor Haile Selassie I, right? They will embark on an invasion in October of 1935, thinking it'll only take a couple months. Well, it won't take a couple of months. It'll be a disaster for the Italians. Matter of fact, it won't be until May 1936 before they finally conquer Ethiopia. And they're going to even have to resort to violating the rules of war. They're going to utilize mustard gas against Ethiopian troops, something that after World War I was a very strict taboo. Matter of fact, so much so, in fact, during World War II, Adolf Hitler will never use poison gas on the battlefield. Now, while the Italian expansion serves as a relative historical side note of the war, I mean, Mussolini will go on to try and, he'll invade and conquer Albania and attempt to invade and conquer Greece, and he's going to need Hitler to bail him out on that. The focal point for fascist expansion, of course, is going to lie with Germany, and specifically Adolf Hitler once he becomes in power. The moment he takes power, he begins to look to see what he can do to dismantle the Treaty of Versailles. The Treaty of Versailles placed all kinds of different restrictions on Germany. For example, the western side of Germany, the Rhineland, was a demilitarized zone because of the Treaty of Versailles. There was not the German army, which only numbered 100,000 troops, was not allowed to go in there. Well, he's going to decide that he's going to begin changing things. He's going to begin with his troop numbers, right? He's going to stop making payments, the reparation payments earmarked by the Treaty of Versailles. Of course, he's going to say, hey, look, the globe's in a depression. We need to focus on Germany first, right? And you're going to see France and Britain kind of back off. They're not going to push that issue too hard, okay? Next, he's going to begin increasing the size of his military, expanding it beyond 100,000. And again, he can use the same kind of excuse. I'm trying to put people to work. I'm trying to get my industry going. One of the ways to do it is through, building up my military. Again, you see an appeasement of this by the British and the French. Finally, he's going to reoccupy the Rhineland. In 1936, he's going to send troops into the Rhineland, and he's going to send them with very specific orders. He says, cross over to the Rhineland, and if the French forces in there, which are maintaining this demilitarized zone, I guess I got to put quotes around that, give you any resistance at all, you are to turn around and come straight back. At this point in time, Hitler is not ready for a war with France. He's already planning for one, but he's not ready for it yet, okay? So he goes there, and France does nothing. Again, they will go ahead and allow Germans to reoccupy the Rhineland. The idea here is by appeasing Hitler on this, on things that maybe they could at least justify as reasonable, then maybe Hitler will be satisfied and he'll stop any kind of aggressive maneuvers. Like I said, the one mistake they're making here is they're not realizing that Hitler is unappeasable. This instead actually emboldens him, and he takes the next step. In March of 1938, he's going to take control of Austria in a move that's called the Anschluss. The Anschluss is this reoccupation, all right, of his homeland. So now Austria is part of what he's now labeled the Third Reich, right? A Reich that he says will last 1,000 years, and he's only off by 900 some odd years, right? Okay, so again, France, Britain are concerned with this, but they justify it. They say, well, the Austrians invited them in there, and there's a lot of subterfuge around that. right? And they try and just kind of, they appease Hitler again, thinking, okay, now he's going to stop. He's got his homeland part of the Reich. Well, then he begins eyeing the Sudetenlands, an area, if you take a look at this map here, you see that little space here on there, that open space there by the knee of the guy in shorts. That's Czechoslovakia. The Sudetenland is that border region that's surrounded on three sides now by Germany. He begins eyeing that and saying that there are 20,000 ethnic Germans that need to be returned to the Reich, which they were never part of the Reich in the first place, but that's, splitting hairs. Okay. At this point now, France and Britain are beginning to feel, hey, this appeasement thing is just ignoring it's not working. We need to start getting actively involved. Neville Chamberlain now is going to take some action. Now, this crisis that takes place in October of 1938 is known as the Sudeten Crisis, right? Now, all of a sudden, Hitler's threatening war against Czechoslovakia, right, for the Sudetenland. So Neville Chamberlain decides it's time to take an active role here. It doesn't mean appeasement's off the table, but it does mean that he needs to be getting actively involved in this. He calls for a conference with Adolf Hitler. So Neville Chamberlain is going to fly to Munich. He's going to fly to Munich, where he is going to he's going to negotiate with Adolf Hitler. Now, at this meeting in Munich, this Munich conference as it's called, you're going to have Neville Chamberlain of Britain. You're going to have Edouard de Ladière of France. You're going to have, of course, Adolf Hitler. He's going to bring in as a unbiased mediator Benito Mussolini of Italy. The group of people that are not there in this meeting is the Czechs. Now, President Beneš of the Czechoslovakian Republic is going to send a delegation to be present at these negotiations, but when they arrive, Hitler's going to fly into a rage. He's going to refuse to allow them into the conference room. They're going to have to sit in the foyer while these men decide the fate of Czechoslovakia. Now, Hitler tells Chamberlain that if I get the Sudetenland, you will not hear from old Adolf Hitler again. This is the last of my territorial claims. And Chamberlain says, seriously, you'll put that in writing? And Hitler goes, what? You want me to write that down? Sure. Why the hell not, right? Because in his mind, he's like, sure, yeah, that'll be a worthless piece of paper, but okay. So they do. They sign a piece of paper, the Munich Agreement, which gives the Sudetenland over to Germany, and Chamberlain's actually going to strong-arm Czechoslovakia to make sure that that happens. And he has a piece of paper signed by Adolf Hitler that you see him waving in this picture that says that, Hitler has no more territorial demands. And Chamberlain makes the rather ominous speech where he says, this, I believe, has brought peace in our time. And he doesn't even realize how wrong he is. Chamberlain himself is a tragic figure in history because by May of 1940, he's going to be out of office. France is going to fall to Germany. All his ideas of appeasement will have failed. In November 1940, he's going to die from bowel cancer. I mean, so by the time he dies, it looks like Hitler's going to conquer all of Europe. I mean, it's truly a tragic figure in history from that point of view. Okay, so they think that they have appeased Hitler, finally. But in March of 1939, Hitler's going to absorb the rest of Czechoslovakia. He's going to take that western portion of it and make it part of the Third Reich. The eastern portion he's going to rename Slovakia, put a puppet Nazi government in it. And at this point, Chamberlain has realized appeasement is never going to work. Hitler now is eyeing Poland, and specifically the Danzig Strip that separates East Prussia from Germany proper. Okay. Chamberlain says any move on Poland will result in war. And he thinks he's probably in good shape with this because, well, there's Russia. Russia's not going to like the idea of Hitler invading Poland. But what he doesn't know is that in August of 1939, Germany and Russia, the communist and fascist governments who historically hate each other, are going to sign an agreement called the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact. Hitler doesn't want war with Russia yet. And so he signs this agreement with Stalin that basically says, hey, I'm going to conquer Poland. You want half? Right? And so they make an agreement to effectively split Poland between each other, and that opens the door for a September invasion and effectively the start of World War II in Europe.